So, last night I had an experience. My dog, turns out, I've been feeding him a new bag of dog food, and when I went online I found out that that dog food is tainted. And the dog, I spent the entire night waking up and cleaning up after the dog, and then cleaning up after him again and again. And you say to yourself, well, that's not a good way to prepare for a talk on a Sunday morning. Until I realized, well, that maybe some of you are cleaning up some messes in your lives, and perhaps you need a little bit of assistance in figuring out, what do you do when you're moving in your life towards a destination and you have a desire in your heart, and then there's these other disruptions that come up. You know, we say, well, I would just like things to be very direct. And as I shared a moment ago, the Spirit-guided path that leads to our answer, I always thought of it as I'm putting a golf ball and it flows smoothly and steadily to the hole, and I get a birdie. And what I found was it's more like I'm throwing that ball into the tub down in the basement, and it's careening loudly off the walls, and then it rolls around a few times, and then it finally finds the hole in the bottom. It gets there anyway, but what's the purpose of having a less direct journey? Our purpose is to grow as souls. My purpose is to grow as a spiritual soul. Together? My purpose is to grow as a spiritual soul. In fact, that's your only purpose. Everything else is secondary. It's wonderful to have answered prayer, but the joy is in the journey, as somebody sang once. That joy is found when you let go into the journey and live unconditionally. Unconditionally meaning that regardless of the circumstances between you and what it is you're moving towards, and it's good to have a destination in mind, that you are going to grow into that person who then can appreciate and experience it. I had someone share with me before the first service how they'd received a wonderful job that they'd been working towards for years, and I'd been praying with them. And as they were sharing with me how this answered prayer was so meaningful and all the gifts that it was giving to them every week in their experience, I looked at them and I said, you know, you grew into the person who could accept and appreciate that gift. We have to be ready. It isn't about getting what we want. It's about growing into the person who can appreciate and hold and know what it is that we're growing into. You are a soul in evolution. You're moving forward in every now moment. But the only way to move forward in life is to move forward unconditionally, to live unconditionally, to love unconditionally, to have an unconditional experience of peace and happiness. And I want to talk about those because they were talked about in terms of Jesus' teachings over and over again. And first of all, we can talk about heaven. Megan was singing about tell heaven, but what's the idea of perfection or the ideal of heaven that your grandparents may have held? What did they think the perfection, the ultimate destination in their soul's journey would be? A place that streets are paved with gold and there's a harp to play and there's angels and maybe you're on a cloud and it's everything is always all the same all the time and nothing ever changes. That's not heaven. That's something that is static, not dynamic. Jesus' analogies for the kingdom of heaven are always dynamic. We're always about change and growth and investing and something small becoming something large and a process, not an end result. It's something dynamic, not static. Well, we have a word in our culture for something that's static. What is that word? Death. That's not heaven. Heaven is a process that's dynamic and constantly growing us and changing us, even if it means waking up in the middle of the night over and over again and taking care of the basement that the dog has left in that condition. Because you get through it it's an opportunity to ask yourself, where am I living from? It's an opportunity to say, what are my resources? What is inside of myself? It's an opportunity to say, thank you, God, thank you, God, thank you, God. Together, Thank you, God. Thank you, God. Thank you, God. You are a match for the world, and the world is a match for you. And the experiences you have in life are bringing you to that place that it's opening your heart and teaching you and growing you into that soul that can then appreciate the wonderful things that do result in life. But you're not addicted to them. You experience them anyway. It's like what they say in mythology. There's always the greatest growth through those unexpected disruptions in life. What did Kurt Vonnegut say? Travel plans being disrupted is just dancing lessons from God. Well, sometimes there's dancing lessons from God in life. There's that wonderful story from the Arabian Nights of the farmer who's plowing and he clunks up against something with his plow and he's upset because his plow is stuck, but when he gets it unstuck, he finds a big ring and he pulls it up and it opens up the ground to a great cave filled with jewels. And he becomes rich, and that disruption in your life, that interference with what it is you thought your journey was, the joy is the journey, not the destination. Happiness is the road. There is no road to happiness. And so you experience the richness of the jewels that are there. Maybe one way to do that is to have something that's kind of playing within your consciousness, something that you can move with. We often hear about using mantras in meditation. Thank you, God, thank you, God, thank you, God. Together. Thank you, God, thank you, God, thank you, God. Or, God have mercy, Lord have mercy, Christ have mercy. I don't know. Or peace. Or, you know how when Gandhi died, what did he say at the moment of his death? He was assassinated. What did he say? Do you remember? Ram. Ram, which is a name for God in Sanskrit. Why would he say that? I thought to myself, was it because he was thinking, oh, I've just been shot. I'm going to think something spiritual. What would be a good word? Ram. No. He was already in that consciousness. He was already saying in his heart of hearts that which meant his spiritual something. And in our lives, the question is, where is your mind when you're not aware of where you're thinking? What are you doing with your consciousness when you're in that process and that journey with disruptions, with likes and dislikes? Maybe you can take charge of that journey. And maybe you can take a word or a phrase or a thank you God, thank you God, thank you God, and move with it and make it that part of yourself. Or the God have mercy, Lord have mercy, Christ have mercy. Or the I don't know what it is for you. But taking that thought and making it a part of yourself so that, like Gandhi, you're marinating in it. It becomes a part of you. How are we going to experience unconditional life and love and joy and peace? You know, Jesus talked about these things. He said, I give you my peace. I give you peace that passes all understanding. What does that mean? It literally means peace that makes no sense. Peace that doesn't make any rational sense because it's beyond conditions. See, it makes no sense to my rational mind because I think peace means, well, the absence of conflict. But no. There's going to be conflict in the world, whatever forms it takes. We need to work and do our job, but no matter what's going on, there will always be something we're dealing with, something to grapple with creatively, something that disrupts what we think is our journey. And so, how do we find that peace? Well, one of the best ways, he gave a clue, is to let ourselves feel what we're feeling. And that's an irony, but it's a powerful one. And I want to share it because it's probably the biggest downfall in the spiritual path. There's so many of us that we call skippers. And I've been one myself. We're going to think I'm going to have a spiritual experience here and an uplifting thing there, and I can skip over all the other stuff that I have to deal with. And that works great until you go visit your parents or your in-laws or have a kid or have a dog or get a job. There's always going to be something to deal with. So what can you do instead? Jesus said, "Blessed are the ones who mourn, for they shall be comforted." And the word he used for mourn, it's not just a few tears. It was a word in Greek that meant deep, powerful, emotional release. It was It was the extreme word for mourning in his culture. And why would you be comforted if you let yourself feel those feelings? It's because on the other side there's a greater peace. We have to let go of those things. And what do you do in a case like that? Well, you perhaps journal it out. You write down, and I have a little process. I forgot to mention it at 9, but it's the question and answer process, and the sheets are outside of fellowship hall. And it just says, agitated energy process is the one down below, and that's the one you'd be using. What is my agitated feeling? And then ask what false belief is causing the feeling, and then let a belief surface, and what true belief would calm me. But first you ask yourself, what am I feeling? And if you say, I don't know what I'm feeling, then ask yourself, well, what would it be if I did know? Because you do know what you're feeling. And then you say sadness, or anger, or fear. It's usually one of those three. And then ask, what's the false belief that I'm holding? What am I holding on to that's causing this? And let yourself experience it. Perhaps journal it out. And then ask, what new and true belief would calm me? And then let that surface, and let that move with you. And let that be your affirmation. So peace that passes all understanding, peace that makes no rational sense, is a peace that allows that there may be opposites in your life, but the peace has no opposites. The peace is whole and complete. Jesus said, I came that your joy may be full and complete. And he said that for a reason. When he said full and complete, it meant that it has no opposite. It's a joy that is not conditional. It's unconditional joy. So if the dog's digestion is doing well, you experience joy. And when the dog's digestion is not doing well, maybe you experience joy after you, blessed are they that mourn, for they shall be comforted. And let yourself experience out. It's okay to let yourself feel what you feel if you don't marinate in it. If you don't get into what's called woundology or victimology. But let yourself pass it through. The peace that passes understanding passes through me. Together? The peace that passes understanding passes through me. So there is that unconditional happiness or joy that has no opposite. The unconditional peace that has no opposite. We want a peace, I know I do, that requires us to have the political things turn out the way I want them to, or to have everybody in my life behave the way I'm dictating for them to do. But sometimes we get experiences in life that condition us so that we can let go and be more unconditional. I had that experience when I moved to Hawaii. When I moved to Hawaii, they moved all my things onto a container and they shipped it. So it took about a month to get there, except for it never got there. And I kept waiting. And I rented temporarily a little 2 rooms for 250 square feet, waiting and living out of my suitcase. And they kept saying, and I found out this was kind of the way over there, it's coming, it's all going to be okay, it's all going to be okay. And I waited, and they couldn't tell me when, but it was coming any time now. So I found myself a condo. It was wonderful. It was on the 8th floor. And then a month later, they sold it. Well, I had a lease, so I got them to pack all my stuff, move all my stuff onto the 9th floor and unpack it. So I went to work. I came back. I was on the 9th floor. A month passed. They sold the 9th floor apartment. Same thing. I went to work. They did it. I came back, and I was on the 11th floor. That's fine. Now this, you understand, this is taking place over a 6-month period. Then they told me they sold that condo. And again, they packed my stuff up, and I moved to the 13th floor. Now, I wasn't too happy at this point, but I said, okay. And I still didn't have my stuff. I was living out of a suitcase. Then, they sold that apartment. And then I was mad at God. And I said, this just isn't fair. Now, I'd been working with my principles and saying my affirmations and writing down what I needed to write down, but I finally just got mad. And I said, I'm not even going to try. But sometimes that's the strongest place to be, to just surrender. I'm going to read a poem to you from Lowell Fillmore, who was Unity's founder's son. When for a purpose I prayed and prayed and prayed until my words seemed worn and bare with arduous use, and knocked and asked and knocked and asked again, and all my fervor and persistence brought no hope, I paused to give my weary brain a rest. and ceased my weary, anxious human cry. And in that still moment, after self had tried and failed, there came a glorious vision of God's power. And lo, my prayer was answered in that hour. Well, what happened for me was, I was just mad that I thought, and then something came over me, just write down on a piece of paper and take it back and put it in your God box. So I wrote down, thank you God for my perfect apartment. But I was still mad. And I was grumbling to myself as I walked into the lobby of the building, and somebody I didn't even know said, oh, you're that young man who they keep selling the condos. You know, there's a new one on that just came due 2 hours ago on the 16th floor. It's open, and the people are going to retire there, and they're not going to sell it. And so I called them, and I moved there. And then right after that, they found all my stuff. It had been 6 months. It was on a dock in Maui. And as a result, they didn't charge the church for my move, which was a great thing for that church because it was expensive. And when I moved all my stuff in, I asked, why? For what good purpose? And sometimes this is a useful exercise. For what good purpose did my soul choose to have this experience of disruption? And what came to me was that I was going to go through a lot of very interesting and difficult changes in that position, in that location, and that I needed to let go of all my familiar parts of my ego, my personal self. You know, our stuff keeps us stuck sometimes in our personalities, our familiar thinking. So I had to let go of all my stuff and have this every month, every 2 months it would happen. And I was living just out of a suitcase. And then I was ready, but I'd been conditioned for that. Now, where in your life are you attached to things, and then circumstances get you to let go? And sometimes they can be scary circumstances. A couple months later, while I was in Hawaii, I went to a place called the Toilet Bowl. I've probably shared this before. It was a place which was a lava tube, and it's near the Waikiki Beach, near Diamond Head. And the tube comes out like this, and then comes out through all the lava, and then all the water is pushed through a V-shaped lava formation, into that little tube. It pushes through the tube, and then it comes up, and it flushes like a toilet. And the trick was that when the tide was right, you jump into it, you'd wait, and then the water would come in, and then it would push through, and then you'd pop up like a cork about 6 to 10 feet in the air. It's illegal to go there now because people got hurt. And I almost had that experience. I was in the toilet bowl and I popped up a few times and I had a nice time, but then too many people got in there and I realized I could get hurt. So I started climbing around on the lava rocks. And I climbed kind of outside of it, past where the tube went out into the ocean. And I was having a wonderful time, and then I looked up and there was one of those waves that was coming. You know, one of those big waves that's about 15 feet tall, and it was rushing into this formation, and I realized I was going to be hit by it. So I grabbed on to hold on tight, and at that moment an eel came out with its teeth, went like this, right out of the hole where I grabbed. It looked like Alien. And I went like this, and then the water hit me, and I let go, and I just went right through the tube, all the way up through, and popped up 10 feet in the air. I never did that again. But it's always been an analogy for me about letting go and trusting. The thing is, you can let go and you can trust in the now moment. You can move in the now moment, but only if you aren't stuck in a conditional living, not living conditionally. That I want a peace that has no conflict in it ever. That I want a joy that has no grieving or mourning or sorrow. That I have a love that has no opposite. That I have a life that has no opposite. But Jesus said, I came to bring life. I came to bring it abundantly. And the only way to experience abundance is to let go into the flow. I let go into the flow. Together? I let go into the flow. And when you can let go into that flow, then you're not rocked by circumstances. You let things come and you let things go, and you're always operating in your soul's best interest. You're not stuck in a certain scenario of exactly the way it's supposed to be. You say to the universe, and the universe says with you, change, I love it. Bring it on, bring it on, bring it on. Together? Change, I love it. Bring it on, bring it on, bring it on. So that's unconditional living. And there's unconditional loving. Jesus said, pray for the people that hurt you and love your enemies. And his love, he also said something very interesting. He said that there's no greater love than somebody lays down their life for their friends. Essentially, he was saying there's no greater love than dying, which is a very strange thing. But what he was really saying was, love is not conditional on having everything the way we want it. Life is not conditional. The experience of abundant life on having everything the way we want it. Peace is not conditional on having everything placid, like strumming a harp, streets paved with gold, in a place that is static rather than dynamic. Joy is not conditional. It's something that we can claim in our lives, but we've got to be willing to do the work of releasing our own attachments and our own feelings about that journey. And that means being honest with ourselves and taking a look at ourselves and letting ourselves, being gentle with ourselves, letting ourselves have a process, letting ourselves know that it isn't about an end result, it's about the process. So we're succeeding, and you say, but I'm not getting the outcome I want. You might get your outcome, or you might have to be surprised by it. Once I said, God, surprise me with your goodness. That was when the car came through the red light and smashed my vehicle and hit the side where Rosalie was when Rosalie was just 2 years old, 1.5 years old in the baby seat. You know, I'd said to my then mother-in-law, I love this car. I was pumping gas. I don't ever want to let this car go. She said, oh, great. I've been getting the feeling that I'm supposed to get a new car, but I don't want to do that. I want to hold on to this car. I really said that. This was 20 years ago or so. And she said, oh, great, don't say that. You know what happens when you do that. We got in the car, and it was only 2-3 minutes later that a woman ran a red light, smashed into the car, totaled it. And I turned around to Rosalie, who, of course, was just in shock. I said, wasn't that fun? And she looked at me and she kind of smiled, and she tells me today that she still thinks of it as a wonderful experience, and it was really kind of fun. Thank God for that. Well, so I stopped and I turned to Linda and I said, God, surprise me. How are you going to surprise me with this? God, how are you going to turn this one to good? Together? God, how are you going to turn this one to good? And then the woman, I think I've shared this, fought the insurance adjuster, and he called me. He was her insurance adjuster. He says, I know I'm working for her, but I want you to know something, and I'm probably not supposed to do this. She's claiming that she didn't see you, but you were speeding. And she, of course, had run the red light. He said, so I just want you to know that, but this may take longer than expected. And I think the guy took so much pity on me that when he totaled my car, he paid me off such a huge amount that I went out and got a Lexus. Surprise me with your goodness. It's not about material things, but I'm sharing being flexible and open in the now moment and not being stuck with having to have conditions a certain way, living your life unconditionally. So I'm getting a feeling, I got a lot more stories and things to tell you, but you don't need to hear them. You already know what you're doing. We just need to do it, right? So just open your heart and mind in this now moment. And emotional authenticity, being real with yourself, but not staying stuck in any of it. And we begin again with lifting up our hearts and our minds, enlightening our energy, enlivening our spirit, imagining every cell of our body aglow with God's light, life, and wisdom, shining beyond the confines of our body and radiating all around and filling the room and dancing and merging and blending with everyone else's light. This is the journey to happiness, is experiencing this. And as I lighten up and lift up, I now let go of all personal control. I even say, my personality is powerless over these circumstances, but there's that in me which is greater. And I let go in trust of that higher something, that higher will. Surprise me with your goodness. And I move into the now moment. I live in the now moment. And I don't let any circumstance dictate to me my experience of my soul. Thank you, God. And so it is. Amen. And now take a deep breath and let it out. And use this to lighten up your energy. The path of answered prayer is the path of light. It isn't so much about the destination or getting what it is we're praying for. It's more about the experience on the way and the journey there. And so lighten up your energy. Imagine that the center of every cell of your body is aglow with God's light, life, and wisdom. And you can see and feel the light particle at the very center of every cell. And you can imagine and feel your light expanding from the latticework of light of your body and moving out, surrounding you and then filling the room and blending and merging with everyone around you. I lighten up. I lift up. And I move with this light. And now I let go. Whatever has been heavy in my heart, whatever may be in process in my life, I cast this burden on God and I go free. I let go of all personal control and I trust. I even admit that my personality is powerless over whatever the circumstance may be, and yet there is a power greater within me that is moving in and through, and I'm willing that higher flow, that higher purpose work out, even if it surprises me. As I lighten up and I let go, I feel an uplifting, freeing, dynamic power. I quiet my mind and I feel this power. I feel this light. I lighten up, lift up. I let go. And I feel and experience the light-filled consciousness. well-being. And I move into this now moment where the answer already is. I let go of my end result, and I experience my joy on the journey, experiencing the good in every moment. Thank you, thank you, thank you, God. And so it is.